So today's Saturday, and I don't get to work quite as long on Saturdays out here in the woods or whatever the project is for the day as I do on every other day of the week. Family calls me on Saturday, and so I sit and talk to family for about an hour, about 8 to 9, so I don't get out here until about 10 o'clock. I work for a couple hours. Of course, I gotta go back in, I gotta get my job done. You know, I work 2 or 3 different times a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and then again in the evening. I had a pretty productive day today. I saw this big log laying here. It was huge. I got probably 2 wagonfuls. I got this here all split up. See, I was using my splitter, my manual splitter. But here I got another wagonful done, split, and this is white oak. This stuff's great firewood. I've been asked the question about deadfall, not burning as well or burning too fast, or it's just not as good as live trees. Well, I just don't agree. When you get down to these hardwoods like oak and walnut and maple, hickory, these are really tough woods. Even though the outer skin of this is wet, the inside is very solid. Well seasoned, this thing is going to be amazing. So I don't have to let it cure or anything. I can burn it right now, and it would put out a lot of heat. When you come to Missouri and you got all this oak and hickory and walnut, is going to get me a long ways because I got several things going for me that I don't think people understand. I'm cutting up oak and walnut and hickory, which already in itself has a long burn time. I think this is oak here. Yeah, this is oak right here. This tree would last me all winter if I were to cut that down, but I got to cut it down, let it season for a year, where this stuff is already done. The only thing I'm losing on this is maybe like an inch or an inch and a half on the outer skin. Now, I don't know what this is, but this right here also is deadfall, but look at it. There is nothing wrong with that. That is going to be great firewood. There's no rot in it. It's perfect. If you're burning pine, pine burns just instantly. You can take the same size piece of oak and it'll last you all night. You know, Carolyn keeps saying don't split them up too small because you can put one piece of oak in the stove, it'll last you all night. Another thing I got going for me is I'm heating a 6 foot by 6 foot box. It just is not going to take a lot to heat it. I can turn on the propane heater. My little camping stove, I call it a heater, but I got 2 burners. One we use for cooking, the other burner we use for heat. A 20-pound can of propane can last 3 weeks heating that little thing with it running all the time. It just doesn't take a lot of heat to heat the camper. Now, the other thing I got going for me is this year, we've insulated the bottom. Before, the camper was sitting on top of the truck. The truck bed was our floor. Well, the truck bed was very cold all the time. One time my shoes froze to the floor of the truck bed. Well, now I won't have that problem because everything's insulated. I'm air conditioning our camper on solar panels, 800 watts of solar panels. So if I can air condition on a hot part of the day, of course, you know, when it's sunny, if I can air condition that little camper on solar panels, imagine what I can do with a piece of oak. Now, the other thing we got going for us is when the stove is turned all the way down, that I can get a temperature, an inlet temperature in my heat exchanger, the one I built a few weeks ago. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. On a video probably, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, you know, I spent a week building this outdoor wood heat exchanger. The inlet temperature got up to 212 degrees. So the heat that was coming into the camper was at boiling point. I could boil water with that. Now, that was with all the vents shut and everything. Well, since then, I have sealed up the stove, so it's not going to get near as much oxygen as it was. Oxygen lets that wood burn really fast. So I can actually slow the burn down even more. Now, the thing is I was only using about 10, 15 pieces of wood a day. I let it run 5 days straight, just constantly, and it barely used any wood. Well, now that I've got it all sealed up, it's going to even use even less wood. So I may be able to get this down to 5 to 10 pieces of wood a day, especially if I just put a big piece of wood in it, like Carolyn keeps saying, don't get them too small, and that one piece will last us, you know, all day long. Now, that will drop the temperature, the inlet temperature, from 212 to say, let's say 140 degrees, which would be perfect. That's exactly the temperature that we want it at on, you know, milder days. I would say anywhere from 20 degrees to 40 degrees, you know, we're going to want around 140 degrees inlet temperature. Well, you know, I got it all sealed up. I know I can do that. On colder days, yeah, we might burn a little bit more wood, but not much. Instead of 140 degrees, I'll raise the temperature up, say 180 degrees. So instead of burning 5 pieces of wood, maybe I'll burn 6 or 7 pieces of wood. And I don't have to cut down our 1.5 acres. I know a lot of people are suggesting that this is not going to be enough wood, but I think even if I had to cut down live trees and let them season, let's say there's, I don't know, 65 to 100 trees sitting on this property. If I used 3 a year, which I think I can, I mean, I've actually researched this quite a bit. I think I can use 3 trees a year. The trees would replenish itself faster than I could actually use it. So I think I got plenty of land too. Of course, trees are going to fall down and deadfall and that kind of thing. The power company will come around every now and trim the trees around. I can ask them to save the wood and I can get it. Now, our neighbor also said we could have their deadfall. Just working 3 hours, 4 hours a day, cutting wood up every day. I mean, think about that. If I get a tree a day like I did today, or half a tree, whatever you want to call it, of deadfall, every day, we're going to have just a massive amount of wood. Now, I want to show you an example of a wood that I won't use. Here I cut into it, and as soon as I cut into it, I realized this is too wet. The core is wet. The outside surface on this one is in good shape. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to waste my time on it. Pieces of this tree on the front end, on the top end, were fine, but the closer I got down to the trunk, the more rotten it got. So I just left it, and then we'll leave that for the bugs. Another couple comments that I've gotten said that don't cut down live trees. It's bad for the environment. Well, I'm not cutting down live trees. I've cut 2 down, but that was so we could have a spot to put our solar panels. So I felt like environmentally, I was actually doing more good by cutting down a couple trees so I could get enough sunlight to power my solar panels than I was hurting the environment by cutting them down. But no, I'm not going to cut down live trees if I don't have to. And like I said, live trees are a renewable resource. These things, every year, look at this. In 10 years, this thing's going to be a full-grown tree. I'm not going to cut down the saplings out here in the woods. I'm going to let them grow. Then I was told, don't cut down dead trees. Because dead trees, and I know this, it's true, woodpeckers like dead trees. They actually make holes in the tree like this one here to feed off of. There's bugs in there. And so they peck away and eat the bugs. But at some point, you got to say, well, wait a minute. I'm not allowed to cut down living trees. I'm not allowed to cut down dead trees. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, I understand we're trying to help the environment here. Am I supposed to go back to fossil fuels? I mean, which fossil fuel would be best? Coal? Let's get the dirtiest one of them all. Let's get coal. And we'll start burning coal. So at some point, you have to say, okay, what's the least amount of damage you can do to the environment and still be able to live? I mean, it sounds to me that sometimes folks think, maybe I shouldn't be here to listen to them talk. But I mean, I got to keep warm. It's just, I have to. So I'm trying to minimize everything so I can. I've minimized the space that I live in. I minimize the amount of burn that I'm going to get because I've sealed up the wood stove. I'm minimizing the damage I'm doing to the woods by using deadfall. Everything that I've done, I've minimized. Now, I wonder how many of these folks, driving around in SUVs telling me I need to save the environment. But even if I was just to cut this one up here on the ground, woodpeckers are eating on this one too. So eventually I'm going to have to say, wait a minute, where is the point where I can actually stay warm? And you got to think about that. Even though you're minimizing the impact on the environment, you can't just stop living. I hope that kind of answers some of the questions about the firewood and how we're going to go about this and the impact that I'm having on the environment. Thanks for watching.